After I confronted my mother with evidence of her crimes, she clutched her chest and collapsed, screaming I was giving her a heart attack. It was her final, desperate ploy to silence me, but I saw the truth in her cold, calculating eyes. My name is Natalie, 32 years old, and I always believed that family was supposed to be your safe harbor in any storm. That belief died at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, in the cold, blue light of my computer screen. I wasn't just looking at evidence that my mother and my brother had been stealing my identity. I was staring at something far more sinister. They had created a shell corporation in my name. They had used my perfect credit and spotless history to apply for a $250,000 federal business loan. And buried deep in a deleted email folder, I found the digital proof of their final, soul-crushing betrayal. A detailed plan to make me the sole scapegoat when their entire scheme inevitably collapsed. They weren't just willing to ruin my finances. They were prepared to let me go to prison for their crimes. This wasn't a simple mistake or a moment of quiet desperation. This was a calculated, premeditated plot to use my life as collateral for their greed, orchestrated by the two people I was raised to trust unconditionally. The pain of it was a physical thing, a crushing weight in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I'm sitting here in my apartment in Chicago right now, and I have to ask, have you ever felt a betrayal so deep it literally took your breath away? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if this is hitting close to home. Because what happened next wasn't just a family disagreement. It was a fight for my future, my freedom, and my very identity. To understand how I ended up there, staring at a federal crime committed in my name, you have to understand the house I grew up in. It was a picture-perfect colonial in a quiet suburb just outside Chicago. Manicured lawn, a 2-car garage, the whole 9 yards. From the outside, we were the American dream. But inside, there was an unspoken rule. The world revolved around my older brother, Caleb. My straight A report cards were met with a dismissive, "Of course, dear." Caleb's C- in algebra, however, was framed as a heroic struggle against a difficult teacher. My achievements were simply expected. His mere participation was celebrated. It's a role a lot of us know too well, isn't it? The responsible one. If you were the responsible kid in your family, type the word always in the comments. I just want to see how many of us are out there. That dynamic came to a head when I received the letter that was supposed to change my life. A full-ride scholarship to the University of Chicago's prestigious MBA program. It was my ticket out, my chance to finally build a life on my own terms. But my mother, Brenda, saw it differently. "Caleb is just getting his real estate venture off the ground," she'd said, her voice laced with that familiar, gentle guilt. "He needs your sharp financial mind, Natalie. The family needs you right now." The message was clear. My dreams were expendable, but my brothers were an investment for the entire family. So I turned it down. I stayed. I took a safe accounting job in a nearby town, and my first significant bonus went straight into Caleb's business, which, unsurprisingly, failed within a year. My father was the only one who ever seemed to notice the imbalance. He was a quiet man, but after I'd used my savings to pay for another one of Caleb's emergencies, he'd discreetly slip me a $100 bill with a sad, knowing look in his eyes. It was his small, silent apology for the family's dysfunction. But when he passed away from a sudden heart attack during my junior year of college, that last, quiet voice of reason vanished with him. The funeral was the moment the new world order was established. While Caleb performed a dramatic show of grief for the crowd, my mother, Brenda, squeezed my hand tightly and whispered, "We're counting on you now, Natalie. You have to be the strong one." With Dad gone, the unspoken family contract was finally set in stone. My role was to be the provider. Caleb's was to have potential. And my mother became the chief operating officer of this toxic arrangement, the one who directed my time, energy, and resources to wherever she felt they were needed most, which was almost always Caleb. My downtown Portland apartment became the family's free storage unit. My spare bedroom became the family's no-questions-asked crash pad. My hard-earned vacation days were no longer my own. They were a community resource pool for family emergencies, like the time I had to take 2 weeks off unpaid to care for my aunt after her hip replacement because Caleb was too swamped at work. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a function, a utility. I was the family's safety net, and I was beginning to realize that safety nets are designed to be fallen on over and over again until they finally break. For a while, my life settled into this exhausting rhythm of work, family bailouts, and a growing unspoken resentment. I was tired down to my bones, but I told myself this was simply what it meant to be a good daughter and a supportive sister. Then, the certified letter arrived. It came on a rainy Thursday, the official-looking envelope from the U.S. Small Business Administration, feeling heavy and ominous in my hands. Inside was a notice of preliminary approval for a business loan for $250,000. The applicant's name was Natalie, and the Social Security number was mine. My blood ran cold. My first thought was identity theft. My second, the one I immediately tried to crush, was Caleb. I called my mother, my voice shaking as I explained the letter. There was a brief pause on her end, and then Brenda's voice, smooth as honey, flowed through the phone. "Oh, honey, don't you panic. It's just a clerical error. Caleb told me the bank mixed up some of his paperwork last week. You know how you tend to overreact. Just let your brother handle it." Caleb got on the line, his tone dripping with condescending reassurance. "Relax, Nat. It's nothing. I'll make one call and get it sorted. You don't need to stress your pretty little head about it." And because I was so desperate to believe them, because the alternative was too monstrous to even consider, I accepted their lie. I let the wave of relief wash over me. It's so easy to believe a comfortable lie over a painful truth, isn't it? Have you ever ignored a massive red flag in a relationship because you just desperately wanted everything to be okay? If you have, just type "ignored it" in the comments. No judgment here. I've clearly been there. That night, I slept soundly, oblivious to the fact that I hadn't dodged a bullet. I had just watched them reload the gun. I relayed the whole bank error story to my boyfriend Mark, expecting him to be relieved. Instead, his expression grew more troubled. "A $250,000 clerical error, Nat?" he asked skeptically. "Banks have systems to prevent that. Are you sure you should just let this go?" His doubt reignited my own buried anxieties. "It feels wrong to suspect them," I whispered, almost ashamed. "They're my family." Mark took my hands. "I know," he said gently, "but this is your entire future we're talking about. You deserve to be absolutely certain." He's the one who suggested the security camera. The idea felt disgusting, like a profound betrayal of trust. But the seed of fear had taken root. The next day, I bought a tiny, discreet camera and hid it on a bookshelf, aimed at my front door and the desk where I kept my financial files. For a week, it recorded nothing but my cat napping in the sun. I started to feel paranoid, guilty. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. My heart slammed against my ribs. I opened the app, my hands shaking. The live feed showed Caleb letting himself into my apartment with a key I never knew he had. He moved with a cold purpose, going straight to my desk, pulling out my files, and photographing my documents with his phone. An hour later, another alert. This time, it was my mother. She walked in, grabbed my mailbox key from its hook by the door, and left. She returned 10 minutes later, clutching my mail, which she quickly sorted through, pocketing several envelopes before replacing the key and leaving as if nothing had happened. The bank error wasn't a mistake. It was a coordinated attack, and it was coming from inside my own home. Seeing that footage was like being doused in ice water. The shock was paralyzing, but it was followed by a strange, cold clarity. For years, they had seen me as the family doormat, the reliable fixer who would clean up any mess. They were about to find out that I'm a forensic accountant. I took a personal day from work and turned my quiet apartment into an investigation hub. I used the same skills I used to untangle complex corporate fraud cases to untangle my own family's web of deceit. I started with the loan application number from that first SBA letter. Using professional databases, I traced it not to Caleb, but to a newly registered LLC I'd never heard of. It was a shell corporation designed to look legitimate. And when I found the name of the sole proprietor, the person whose personal assets were legally on the line for that $250,000 loan, my blood turned to ice. It was me. The camera footage gave me the exact dates and times they were in my apartment. I cross-referenced those with my email account's login history and found what I was looking for. Unauthorized access from an IP address near my mother's house. I dug into my deleted emails, and there it was. A hidden history of their plotting, emails from me to the bank, authorizing Caleb to act on my behalf, forged signatures. But the final, soul-crushing blow was an email from my mother to my brother. Caleb was worried the bank was getting suspicious. My mother, Brenda, wrote back, "Don't worry. If this goes wrong, we'll say Natalie authorized everything. Worst case, she takes the hit. She'll understand." It's for family. They weren't just stealing my money. They were building me a cage. Armed with a folder containing printed emails and screenshots from the camera footage, I walked into my mother's house for our weekly Sunday dinner. The familiar smell of her pot roast filled the air, a scent that once meant comfort, but now felt like the prelude to a battle. I sat through the meal in a surreal haze, my heart pounding against my ribs as they chattered about mundane things, completely unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. After dessert, I couldn't stand the charade any longer. I slid the folder onto the center of the table. "I know everything," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "The key you copied, the shell corporation, the loan, the emails about me taking the hit." For a fleeting second, I saw pure, unadulterated panic in their eyes, but it vanished in an instant, replaced by a cold, unified wall of defiance. Caleb was the first to speak. "You spied on us?" he sneered, his voice dripping with manufactured outrage. "What kind of sick person puts cameras up to spy on their own family? You're just jealous because for once in my life, I have a real vision, and you can't stand to see me succeed." My mother quickly chimed in, her tone sickeningly sweet. Natalie, honey, you're twisting everything. What we did for the family. It's a shame you've become so selfish that you can no longer see that. Selfish. That was the word they chose. My refusal to be their criminal scapegoat was selfish. I looked at their hard, unyielding faces and understood. There would be no apology, only accusations. It's a terrifying moment when you realize the people you love are incapable of seeing your pain. If you've ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting a relationship that was hurting you, what did you choose? Type myself or them in the comments. I truly want to know. In their eyes, I wasn't the victim. I was the obstacle. The accusation hung in the air, so absurd and twisted that for a moment I could only stare at them. Selfish? I finally echoed, my voice trembling with a lifetime of suppressed rage. I gave up a full-ride MBA at the University of Chicago for this family. I emptied my life savings for Caleb's last failed business. I have spent my entire adult life putting every single one of your needs before my own, and you have the audacity to call me selfish. That's when my mother's expression changed. The mask of the wounded matriarch fell away, replaced by something chillingly pragmatic. Those were investments in the family's future, Natalie, she said, her voice suddenly cold and devoid of emotion. Caleb has children to support. He is trying to build a legacy, something that will carry our name forward. That requires capital. It requires risk. And I was the capital, I shot back. My future, my freedom, that was the risk you were willing to take. Her composure finally snapped. Don't be so dramatic, she said, her voice sharp. What do you really have? A rented apartment and a safe little job with spreadsheets. Caleb is building something real. His potential is greater. We made a calculated decision that his legacy was worth more than your stability. There it was. The truth, laid bare in the cold, brutal language of a business transaction. I wasn't her daughter. I was an asset to be leveraged. My life was a line item on a balance sheet, and I had been deemed the less valuable one, the one it was acceptable to sacrifice. The fraud, the theft, none of it hurt as much as that single, devastating admission. In her eyes, my future was simply the cost of doing business. The room fell silent, the air thick with the finality of her words. I looked at my mother, this woman who viewed me as a line item on a spreadsheet, and I felt nothing but a vast, empty coldness. I gathered my purse and the evidence folder from the table. I'm done, I whispered, more to myself than to them. I'm finally done. But as I turned to walk out of that house and their lives forever, a strangled gasp cut through the silence. I spun around to see my mother clutching her chest, her face contorting in a theatrical display of pain, her body swaying dramatically. My heart! Brenda wheezed, stumbling into a dining chair. The stress! Natalie, you're doing this to me. You're killing your own mother. Caleb rushed to her side, playing his role in this sick performance to perfection. Mom, what's wrong? He shouted, glaring at me. Look what you've done! Is this what you wanted? To give her a heart attack? For one terrifying second, a lifetime of conditioning kicked in. A jolt of guilt shot through me, the primal instinct to run to her, to fix it, to apologize for a crime I didn't commit. They were counting on it. But as I stood there, frozen in the doorway, I saw it. Through her performance of pain, her eyes were locked on me, sharp, calculating, and desperate. She was watching me, waiting to see if her final, most powerful weapon would work. It was the ultimate emotional blackmail. This is a choice no one should ever have to make. Do you sacrifice your own well-being for a toxic family member, or do you save yourself and walk away? Let me know in the comments which path you think is the bravest. In that instant, I knew if I took one step toward her, I would be their prisoner forever. I looked at my mother, clutching her chest in a performance worthy of an Oscar, and at my brother, his face a perfect mask of false concern, and I felt the last thread of lifelong obligation inside me snap. This wasn't a medical crisis. This was a hostage negotiation, and my guilt was the ransom they were demanding. My entire life, I had been trained to run towards their fires, big and small, always ready with a bucket of my own water to extinguish the flames. I had doused my own dreams to keep them from getting singed. But this fire was different. It was a trap, designed to burn what was left of me to the ground. So I did the hardest, most liberating thing I have ever done. I looked my mother in her calculating eyes, and without saying another word, I turned my back on her supposed agony. I walked out the front door of my childhood home as Caleb screamed after me, calling me a monster, a heartless daughter. Maybe he was right. Maybe you have to find a core of hardness within yourself to finally break free. I didn't stop until I was safely locked inside my car. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. Instead, I felt a strange, terrifying calm wash over me. I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Mark. "Oh, it's over," I said, my voice clear. "I'm out." The second was to my lawyer. "Diane, it's Natalie," I said, my voice steadier than I could have imagined. They tried one last time to pull me back in. I'm ready now. Let's proceed with filing everything. As I hung up and drove away, I knew there was no going back. The Natalie who always said yes was gone. I was driving away from her funeral, finally ready to start my own life. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal maneuvers. My lawyer, Diane, was a force of nature. She filed injunctions, contacted the credit bureaus, and put a freeze on everything. But when she reviewed the evidence regarding the Small Business Administration loan, she looked at me with serious eyes. "Natalie," she said, "this goes beyond simple identity theft. Trying to defraud a federal program is a major crime." That's when the FBI got involved. It turns out when you lie on a federal loan application, a different class of investigators shows up at your door. 2 agents from the Chicago field office interviewed me for hours. I handed over everything: the video footage, the printed emails, the forged applications. They were calm, professional, and methodical. My family's desperate, amateur scheme unraveled under their professional scrutiny in less than a month. The arrests happened on a gray Wednesday morning. I wasn't there, but news travels like wildfire in a quiet suburb. Neighbors called to tell me about the black government cars parked in my mother's driveway. Caleb was taken in from his office in handcuffs. Their bank accounts were frozen, their assets seized. The perfect family from the house with the white picket fence was now the subject of a federal investigation. My phone blew up with calls from extended family, accusing me of tearing the family apart, pleading with me to fix this. They couldn't understand that I hadn't broken the family. I had simply exposed the fact that it was already broken beyond repair. There was no joy in it, no sense of victory, just a profound, hollow sadness. I was the one who had to light the match, because they had built a pyre and placed me on top of it. The legal battle was long and agonizing. In the end, Faced with the mountain of evidence I had provided, my brother Caleb took a plea deal and served 3 years in federal prison for fraud. My mother, due to her cooperation, received 5 years of probation and was ordered to pay hefty restitution. The family I had spent my entire life trying to please was officially and irrevocably broken. But from those ashes, a new one began to grow. My boyfriend, Mark, and my best friend, Laura, became my true family. They were my anchors through the legal storm, helping me navigate depositions, and more importantly, helping me rediscover my own worth. I learned that setting a boundary is not an act of aggression, but an act of self-preservation. I eventually left my corporate accounting job. The experience had changed me too profoundly to go back to just crunching numbers. Today, I run my own financial consulting firm. I specialize in helping small business owners, people with real dreams, protect themselves from the very kind of internal fraud that almost destroyed me. I turned my deepest wound into my life's purpose. Here is the lesson I learned in the most brutal way possible. True family doesn't demand your sacrifice. They inspire your growth. You are not a resource to be depleted. Your kindness is not a weakness to be exploited. Sometimes, the bravest and most loving thing you can do is to say no, to hold people accountable, and to walk away. You cannot set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. If this story has resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of rewriting your own narrative, please hit that subscribe button and join this community. Let's build our own legacies together. Thank you for listening.